Yo, CMask Nation and Nations. We're back with another show after another brief hiatus. People were tending to sick family and vacations with sick family. So, Mike and Will, it's good to see you guys again. We're hopefully we can get back to a regular clip of this. How are you boys doing?
Yep, really well. Enjoying a bit of rare heat here in the UK.
Doing super well as well, despite the sleeplessness and a new baby. Things are going super well. I'm just happy that no matter how much we miss or there's inconsistencies, we always end up coming back. So praise
That's
God.
what counts. That's what I'm told counts anyway. Mike, did you announce the name of the boy, the little boy?
Oh, yeah. His name is Ambrosio Charbel, named after St. Ambrose and St. Charbel. So a mighty, mighty Catholic name. So hopefully the name alone is enough for him to convert millions of souls as he gets older.
It's a strong name. It's a strong name.
It is. Yeah, double thing. You gotta love that. Well, congrats again, auguri, as they say in Italy. Mike and Will, it's good to see you today. What I like to do, I'm doing, which is a kind of clip reaction show on CMask. Last Friday, Lila Rose had on her channel a woman called Mary Stamford, who is a part-time professor at Christendom College. There's some problems there, but the main idea is that what we're saying about patriarchy and obedience seems to be catching. And, there's always going to be things like limited hangouts. It's a CIA technique where they basically contain the message and do partial messaging and stuff like that. You could argue that that's what's happening, where they kind of shunt aside the main bringers of the message and then bring forward some false prophets and do a limited hangout and sort of cut the message in half. I'm not sure that that's happening here. And as along with you guys being the bringer of the patriarchy message, I thought I would play for you. You guys haven't heard these clips yet, what this Mary Stamford is saying to Lila Rose. But the point is, Lila Rose, huge feminist. We've covered her on this show. I think we've done clip shows on this show. And she seems to be coming around to obedience. People get hip, and that's why movements matter.
Well, eventually, when gender dysphoria it becomes so wrought and so widespread, eventually even a partially informed conscience comes around to understanding the truth. And so she's coming around. Praise God. I think we're seeing this happen more and more these days. I think due in small part to our message and the work that you've done, Will, and especially Tim with the case for patriarchy. So I haven't seen these clips, so I'm stoked to get into them with you guys. It's going to be good.
Yep. In the end, reality always wins. It just takes time. All fantasies are going to break against the rock of reality in the end.
That's right. Truth outs. It just takes a while, and we don't really expect to see it on the order of justice in our lifetimes, even when we're toiling. You get used to, I guess, what Will you reference as the long, slow defeat, in our movie. But sometimes you win and you start winning. But so you guys tell me. So Lila's a huge kind of anti-abortion, crypto-feminist Catholic woman, about somewhere between my age and Will's age. And she's been around a long time in America. You're Mike, you're in Canada. Will, you're in England. But she's pretty well known. And people started finding out about 4 or 5 years ago through my work and your guys' work. Oh, wow. This Lila Rose, we always considered a conservative, has a lot of feminism in her. The conservative movement, Con Inc. in America and English-speaking places, has a lot of feminism in it. And she's been resistant to what's been going on the last 4 years, particularly the last 2 years, the red pilling of secular people and Christian people alike. But I wanted to play some of these clips from her show. I think I have 10 clips. And what you're going to witness is Lila Rose coming around. Now, the book of her guest, Mary Stamford, is called The Obedience Paradox. So I heard the title. I thought, is this going to be mutual submission? This is going to be prop up mutual submission and just make it some sort of complex thing. They did begin the interview by saying, well, what really does submission of wife to husband require? And I thought for a second time, not patriarchy paradox. That was your lecture, Will. Obedience paradox, number one, red flag. Overcomplicating this relatively simple issue of spousal submission, wifely submission, another red flag. But then Mary Stamford started talking, and there are a few problems with what she's saying and a few problems with what she's doing, but it really sounds pretty good. And I don't really grade on a curve. So I wanted to get your guys' opinions. I've been having problems with the YouTube, so I'm just going to play it here. This is the first of 10 clips. See what you think.
Talking, just heeding what he had to say. Dad said to do this, guys, come on, just sort of, it wasn't overt, but you felt it, you experienced it. And then, from my dad to my mom, if my mom.
She's talking about her dad and her mom, who had, I guess 9 kids, rare for boomers. And she actually had a good exemplar in her dad and her mom of non-feminism, and her dad being heated. That's what this is. Sorry.
Believe me, even the decision to homeschool, I would say that came from my mom. Her instincts about what were going on at our parochial schools in the 80s, they were spot on. There was a lot of stuff that was harmful, I think. And she said, I want to do this thing. And I think my dad probably thought, oh boy, what? How strange. Again, it was a big deal at the time. And yet he trusted her. He trusted her instincts when it came to her kids and their kids, right? But she had special gifts, I think, of intuition. Edith Stein talks about that moral sense about what's good for kids. She had it big time. And my dad listened to her. And it was scary. I remember she said she did her rosary every day for a year, that Dad would come around because she knew they both had to be on board.
Did your dad know that your mother was praying the rosary daily for him to change his mind?
I don't think so. I'll need to confirm on that after this, right? But what I also appreciate
she was
about
not being like, oh, you won't let me homeschool. It was more like, you're not on the same page with me. Like, come on, fight. It was more like, I love you. Yeah, let's pray about it. Thank you for considering. Okay, let's think about it. I'd still love to do it.
I know.
Her posture, it sounds like, was a gracious.
It was huge because I think she tried to railroad him into it.
Yeah.
Right? There's a whole story that I share in the book about when you try to railroad your husband into something, and because she respected him, and she knew that she couldn't do this alone. So for her part.
So I think this was the first section in the interview where I realized that, this isn't going to be a total train wreck. And Lila was being friendly with it, and but it was good. Now she references Edith Stein. That's a bit of a problem we can talk about when it keeps coming up. She is teaching men, and she is a professor, part-time. This is a bit of a problem, and they're going to get into this wrong idea that patriarchy is only post-lapsarian. But we'll deal with those 3 main problems with what she's saying in a minute. I just wanted to hear what you guys had to say. This is the first time I think Lila Rose has ever had a Catholic pro-life feminist on. Lila has a Catholic pro-life feminist show. I think this is by far the least feminist or the most anti-feminist guest I've ever heard her have. She always has female guests. Mike, then Will, what did you guys think hearing a woman on a mainstream show talking about her mom and her dad, her mom respecting her dad's decision?
Well, this was certainly an example of what happens when a woman understands for graces to be conferred unto her husband, her obedience is not just to her husband, her obedience is to God through her husband, and that those prayers, in addition to her wifely duty in submitting to her husband, confers those graces that could lead to conversions, that could lead to all kinds of revelation in a man's soul and a man's role as husband and father. And that's a perfect example of that. I mean, that is scriptural to the core. That it's not like this browbeating longhousing of a man that gets him to change in a true transformative way for a man to embrace the full cross of fatherhood and being a husband, but it is precisely through that wifely submission and graces being conferred through prayer and obedience that makes this happen. I mean, I've seen it happen in my own life. My wife has prayed for numerous things that I had sort of been afflicted by in our marriage, and through her obedience to me, which is ultimately obedience to God and respecting the order of creation, the order of our household, things change. And sometimes they happen quickly, sometimes slowly. but that's the cross to bear. And it sounds like this woman really understood that. I mean, praise be to God.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mike. So many guys think that they have to be personally perfect for their authority to be respected, but really the authority that you're asking her to respect is the one that God has delegated to you to use for the good of the family. So what I like about this is that when she was saying that her mom had that intuition and had concerns about the schooling system, etc., it's obvious that the dad listened to the mom's counsel about it, right? He heard her opinion, but in the end, she knew that he had the final say. She wasn't trying to nag him into it. She just said what she thought and then prayed and waited. And then he made the call, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, great comments. I thought the exact same thing. Whoa, a guest on Lila Rose's show sharing in positive light, in hortatory light, the idea of a wife wanting her husband to come around to, maybe hearing a position she offered once and just prayed about it for the rest of the year, and he eventually came around. I thought, this is a different kind of interview than every other Catholic feminist I've ever heard Lila interview. So it was really, really good. I mean, think of how offensive that is to feminists, that a wife has to not just ask her husband and not be immediately granted, like a petulant child, but then she asks, he says, no, I'm not really into this, and then she just prays throughout the year, and eventually his heart is converted. I knew right then, early in the interview, I think about 10 minutes in, that this will be a bit different. Not perfect, mind you, but different. Here's the second clip I wanted to share with you guys.
And if so, what did fighting or conflict look like? And then what did conflict potential resolution look like with your parents?
Yeah, I think it is, I was a very sensitive child. And if my parents even had a small argument, I remember being very upset by it, because I thought, but I think it's important that, of course, we're all human. And so most people will see their parents have a conflict. But it's important then to see them make up. My parents, again, Irish Italian.
And if so, what did fighting or conflict look like?
What I liked here that I just thought I would share is, you'll hear a lot of trads say, your kids should never know that an argument's happening. Your kids should never even, it's fine to argue, but it's got to be completely cloistered. And that's not, in my experience, real life. I mean, fights happen suddenly. They're rare for me and my wife, but when they happen kind of suddenly. And it's not like you just, in my case, we just cloister ourselves to one spot. But she said, yeah, if the fight begins publicly, then the main thing is to show the kids the apology and the makeup. Let that happen publicly. That's the most important thing on the order of justice. And I never hear anybody else say that. Whenever I hear Catholics talk about marital spats, which is a reality every once in a great while, in my household, it's still, they happen. And people talk in these hushed tones, in my experience, about it as if it's like, okay, well, that's technically all right. Doesn't technically mean you're going to get a divorce if you had one fight, but it has to be completely silent. And that's just not realistic. It can be out there. Your house is already behind closed doors enough. Just let the apology go public. What do you think about this, Will and Mike? What's your guys' philosophies on fighting, and what do you think of what she said here?
Original sin, which is something that even when you're fresh, right out of confession, still leaves its mark on you in terms of disordered tendencies and weaknesses. Original sin means that there's going to be tensions and fights in even the best of marriages. The Catechism says marriage is very hard. Saints describe it as being like a slow daily martyrdom. So to pretend that fights never happened is absurd for anyone with any kind of understanding of what fallen human nature involves. But that point about letting the kid see that you can heal after it, right? You have the persistence and the patience, the forgiveness to heal after it. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, my philosophy is pretty simple. I mean, it's, no different than living out your faith in public so your kids can see it, including going to confession, and so they understand contrition and, that spiritual resolution that comes from absolution. But it's arguing is okay in front of the kids, so long as things don't get bombastic and crazy, and names are called and swearing happens, which, I mean, that we all understand there should be a line that we don't cross.
Don't get Italian. Don't get Italian.
Don't get Italian, and in my wife's case, Lebanese, which can be like, oh, that could be gasoline and fire right there. But the main point is, you want to give your kids the full scope and view and perspective on the sacrament of matrimony, which includes conflict, but ultimately the philosophy is simple: allow them to see the conflict resolution, have a healthy understanding and perspective on argumentation in marriage. But what does that look like to resolve? I mean, it's pretty simple. It's amazing how guys and women screw this up. I don't think it's that hard to do. And when your house is well ordered, I mean, you're not going to be arguing that much anyways. So when you do, I mean, man, you should be tempered enough to know how to resolve those things. And if it happens publicly with your children, just don't let them see you go to bed on that anger. At least just resolve it in front of them too. Pretty simple.
Yeah. When I was a kid, one thing my dad used to say that I've remembered, and he was secular, is that it's not you and me, it's the circumstances, right? He would say that he and my mom were arguing about something that was other than just the marriage. It was something that had happened, unexpected bill or job loss or whatever, had caused stress. And he said, it's the circumstances. And there's a lot of truth to that, because sometimes kids need to know that life is just stressful and there are challenges, but it's nothing like a personal vendetta you have against each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think in marriages that are just rotting, people tend to fight like I don't know, maybe teenagers with their first boyfriend or girlfriend. Or you're just fighting because you're not getting along and nothing really happens, but you're just fighting. I remember having a first girlfriend, and it's spoiling and kind of just realizing, oh, we're just fighting all the time. That is hopefully not the case with anyone and his spouse, but I like that a lot. I also just find it really phony. It's bullshit when people are like, well, we only fight, behind closed doors. I know most of the households out there that are operating on this crypto feminism have to have much more frequent fights, and they happen suddenly and whatever, and everyone's not particularly with that great frequency. I simply don't buy what I hear Catholics say, that they always excuse themselves. I'm not opposed to saying, okay, if we're going to see that this thing's going to take longer than 5 minutes to resolve, let's go in our room and deal with it privately. But I don't know. I just don't buy it when people pretend that they've never had like a crossword in front of their kids. It gets really phony fast. So
worse than that, Tim. I reckon that some of these trads who imagine their kids never know they're fighting, the kids do know. The fighting just comes out in passive aggression and sulking, right? You didn't give your wife a kiss when you walked past her. You're not flirting. You're not smiling. They know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say that. I mean, that's what that ultimately produces, right? If they don't see the conflict and conflict resolution, you're doing it behind closed doors. The house becomes wrought with this passive tension because of the man's effeminacy and inability to handle that stress and bring it to resolution, regardless if he's right or wrong. And what you said, Will, about how your dad handled fights, if it's not you guys versus the problem and it's, you versus your wife, you've already lost the plot right there by itself. Yeah. And so, I lived in a home where that tension was kind of there all the time. And that destroys a kid's mind. That destroys the environment, the familial environment. So, that's super, super well said.
Hey.
Yeah.
Tim, this question from Matthew is kind of interesting. You'll be the best person to answer it. If the woman verbalizes to her husband that she's praying for him to change his mind, then would that be wrongly ordered? So she actually says, I'm going to pray the rosary in the hope that you will change your heart and mind on the topic of homeschooling.
Lila actually mentions this to Mary. She's like, did your dad know that your mom was praying? And I think she says she didn't know. I mean, it depends. Intent is determinative here. If it's meant manipulatively, the way women can easily, because of original sin, naturally slip into manipulator mode, then that could be, hey, a lot's writing on this. I'm doing a novena specifically for this, hoping you turn around. But I think if particularly ex post, if the man makes a decision maybe favorable to her and then says, oh, I was praying for this, I think that's certainly better. If he knows in real time, it just depends on how manipulative, how much she's attempting to manipulate the outcome and the circumstances and stuff. So I don't think necessarily. I don't know what your take on that is, but because you're also living in really close quarters, so typically you kind of see, not always, but just see prayer, and you might see an extra prayer and kind of put two and two together. I don't know. Could go either way.
My hunch was, from what I heard in the interview, if she just said, this is what I want with the homeschooling, but I appreciate that's not what you want, then she kind of left it at that. If she said, and I'm going to pray in the hope that you come around, I don't think there's a problem with that.
No, I don't think so at all. Here's the third clip. Remember, there are some. Mary Stamford seems to be pretty solid. I mean, I'd give her a B+, A-, even with these three big problems. She keeps coming back to Edith Stein. I'll let her say some more Edith Stein stuff before I jump into what's wrong with Edith Stein. That's one problem. Of course, she is it's sometimes teaching men throughout this interview. That's a big no-no. I mean, that's arguably grave matter. Just reading the Pauline passages, but she's mainly posturing as teaching women, which is good. And then eventually they're going to get into this straightforwardly wrong notion going against most of the patristics in terms of, was patriarchy there all along, or was it only there after the fall of Adam and Eve? Was it pre or post lapsarian? That might be this quote. Let me see.
Paradox. What is the obedience paradox? Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
For anyone wondering, the lecture that got me fired, the patriarchy paradox. The paradox is basically that women like it. That was it.
Yeah. Patriarchy paradox. Nice alliteration is that women actually like it when men take charge, and it's only a paradox from the perspective of feminists. And obedience paradox, which Mary Stamford's about to unpack, is also sort of only paradoxical from a fallen perspective. Here's what she says.
Obedience paradox. What is the obedience paradox? Yes. This is the title of your book.
Right. And I think the paradox is that we tend to associate obedience with a lack of freedom, right? Somehow, if you have to obey, does that mean you're sort of subpersonal? You're not an equal. You're not free. You are bound to do whatever he says or whatever. And so the paradox is, I would say that's not actually the case. As a matter of fact, to actually obey, to say to someone, just in general, whether we're talking about God or in a situation, to say, I want what you want, right? Thy will be done. I'm saying that with my will, right? Only a free creature can do that, right? Only a free creature. It's really not appropriate to even speak of creatures that don't have freedom as obeying. We talk about doggy obedient soul. We talk about maybe the planets obeying the laws of nature. That's really just it's an analogy. It's not what obedience actually means, right? It means freely saying, yeah, I want to make your will my will. And so not only does it require a free creature, but it also opens us to the possibility of spiritual union, whether it's with God, with a spouse, as friendships, So this idea of obedience, I think biblically, is 100% linked with this notion of receptivity. I mean, even the word obedience comes from the word to hear. And every time our Lord in Scripture talks about hearing and receiving, he always associates it with the bearing of fruit. Right? He who hears my word and keeps it, he it is that will bear much fruit. It's this receptivity. St. Elizabeth, when she's praising Our Lady in the Visitation, says, blessed is she who believed, right? What she heard, what was told to her. And blessed is the fruit of her womb. So there is a link between hearing, between receiving and embracing and bearing fruit. And so in the book, really the paradigm that I use, which again, I think is biblical, it is consistent with the relationship between Christ and the church, is that there is between Christ and the church, described as bridegroom and bride.
Obedience paradox.
Just a couple quick things. She seems like a real sincere lady from the rare. She's probably a little older than we are, maybe 10 years older. But, during the 70s and 80s, it seems like she was raised in a real nice Catholic home, a sincerely Catholic home. That's a almost sui generis thing. She says, I like the idea that she's talking about here. I don't know why it requires an entire book, but it is true. Obedience is something that only rational animals are capable of. We talk about our dog doing it, but it's not a rational decision they make when they obey. We talk about the celestial bodies obeying the laws of physics. They're not rational animals, so it's not a freely made decision. That's good. I also don't like how she says the misconception is that if you obey, well, you're not an equal. Well, wives aren't equal with their husbands. But she's trying really hard. She also has one of those whisper voices. She always sounds like she's letting you in on a secret. I typically don't like people with those whisper voices, but then I realized that it's a lot of East Coasters who talk like that, like they're letting you in on a big secret. But other than that, I kind of like her. What do you, Mike? What do you think of what she's saying here about her book?
Well, a couple things. So wasn't it Aristotle that said that marriage is a relationship between unequals? So this whole idea of like so it's of egalitarianism within marriage. I mean, feminism is so wrought in our society that we still kind of think in this idea of like equal and unequal. We just kind of have to come back to the root of it, is that we are unequal because we're created fundamentally differently. And I agree with you, Tim. I guess in the world that we live in now, we need this very much padded explanation of what obedience and submission is. Like, people should just read The Case for Patriarchy or Ask Your Husband and just understand that, like, submitting to your husband is right and just and good. It's obedience to God, and like leaving it at that. I think it's just, I'm so tired of the overly fluffy, overly explanatory language justifying something so simple. Like, this is how far that we have that we've fallen. It's like, it's very simple. Emulate Mary. I mean, it's just like this comment that's up on the screen. If man want a woman like Our Lady, then be like Saint Joseph, according to the standards of God and Saint Joseph, not according to like your wife's idea of what she thinks Saint Joseph is. And then if women want a Saint Joseph, then she must be like Our Lady. I mean, this is what I love about CMAS. We just boil it down. We make it super simple. However, giving credit to where credit is due, the fact that this conversation is becoming a bit more mainstream, I got to give it to that lady. You said her name is Mary. Kudos to her, because I think a lot of women are going to be able to receive that really well and then bless their homes as a result.
Yeah, like I said before you jump in, Will, I was on the borderline throughout the interview, surprised the whole way. Wow, I'd give this lady kind of a B plus. Then as it went on, I was like maybe A minus at times. So it is good sign that the Overton window is expanding. What do you think, Will?
Definitely. You can see she's pussyfooting a bit around authority. There's some slight awkwardness there, and that's to be charitable to her. I think it's because everyone's mind is just so rotten with liberalism and the idea that doing your own thing and acting on your selfish impulses is the highest form of life. But many popes have written on the fact that liberty and license aren't the same thing. And true liberty, the freedom to do what is good, actually requires that authority structure. Like, we need the rules, if you like, to live within to actually flourish as human beings. Or if you need it another way, like you're not going to play basketball without the lines on the court, right? There has to be some kind of structure to actually make the game thrive. Same for human nature too. And discipline and authority in general are liberating, right? Mike knows this with his coaching experience for guys trying to get in shape or just free themselves from various bad habits. You introduce discipline into their lives, things improve. And there's a really beautiful verse in the book of Sirach about this, 51:34, one of my favorite ones. Submit your neck to the yoke and let your soul receive discipline, for she is near at hand to be found. It's good for men, and it's also good for women, wives, and it's good, guess what, for kids too. Goes all the way down the family and right the way through society.
That's excellent. That's an excellent passage. I'm going to go find that one. I like it.
That's essential reading for all men. Sirach. I mean, if you were to take the whole Bible, obviously is necessary. We need to, but if a guy wanted a blueprint on how to be a man, if he just took the Gospels and Sirach, maybe Ecclesiastes, he'd be set. So all men in the chat, all men listening to this after the fact, if you haven't read Sirach, go and read it immediately. It's so based.
Guys, it's not a pickup line for a first date, though. You can't just say submit your neck to the yoke.
Yeah. You got to ease that one in, like maybe more directly, but than Mary Stamford's doing, but but not overly subtle, not overly directly. Let's hear.
Are you saying that you were really kind of trying to plumb the depths of that particular? Let me pull up the Bible verse about submission really quick.
Ephesians 5.
Was Ephesians 5 really what you were wrestling with?
Yes, I don't think I was wrestling with it personally in the sense because I had witnessed my parents and it was healthy. I didn't feel threatened by it, but I would.
I'm going to pause there. I like how Lila's trying to frame it the way that it would be framed for her or most of her listeners like, so you're trying to not completely rebel against this clear passage in Ephesians, but it's also like it appears once in almost each of the Pauline letters. I don't know why they're so hung up with Ephesians 5. It's also Timothy. It's also Titus. It's also 1 Corinthians. It's all over the place. It's also Colossians. So the feminists, always deal with Ephesians 5 like it's this sui generis, one example, one-off in the Bible. It's just not. Everywhere the Bible is telling women to submit to their husbands, but he tries to frame it for Mary as a struggle session. You came out deciding to honor God and honor your husband. Was this really hard? And she's like, not really. I mean, I saw my parents do it, and I think that's the difference between her and everyone else. Most people did not see this kind of behavior from their boomer parents. But listen to what she says.
Yes.
What you were wrestling with?
Yes,
Or
I don't think I was wrestling with it personally in the sense because I had witnessed my parents and it was healthy. I didn't feel threatened by it, but I would notice that sometimes, like priests, when that epistle would come around, priests were hesitant to be hesitant. Either they said, there's even at one point there was something bracketed out where like they didn't have to say that word. And then if they did have the courage to preach on it, they would usually spend most of the homily sort of cushioning it by saying, yes, but look at the men, they're called to give and to lay down their life, which is, again, wonderful, huge, risky. This is everything. Like, this is actually what men need to be, like, dwelling on is that call. Wow, right?
what about the women? We have to do our part.
What does it mean? But I thought if all you keep saying is that he is called to make sacrificial gift, then logic dictates the response to a gift is receiving. And so what does that look like? And what are some things that, even in our fallen nature as women, kind of inhibit our receptivity, right? What can we work on? You sort of want bride and groom to be asking, what can I work on? So when you hear a young man saying, I can't wait to be head of the house, I want a woman who will submit, that sometimes can come off as a little bit alarming, because instead of saying, how can I find a woman who will submit, you don't need to worry about that just yet. Let's
In this clip, I started thinking everything you heard thus far, I started thinking maybe she gets an A-. That's really good from the first 2 or 3 things she said. But then they start talking about a man wanting to be head of his own house. That's a red flag. No, it's not. What are you guys talking about? Of course, Lila has a problem with it. I was surprised even Mary Stamford is not wanting it. It's not consistent with what else she's saying. And this is women when they're trying to have like a talk show. Even the smarter ones are contradicting themselves.
about what can I bring? What do I have to offer? And how can I lay it down? How can I serve her? And she's going to be moved by that. And she's going to respect that. And I'm telling you, most women are going to want to receive that. But again, sometimes we ourselves haven't done enough self-examination. And sometimes we can hurt and wound the men in our lives and dismiss them. And because we don't realize when we fail to be receptive, how they experience that. Because their identity is very bound up in what they have to offer. And again, that's sort of something that I tie in that goes in with our physical differences as well, right? A man, his physical design is meant to be generative. It's to act on the world beyond himself. Physically, our design is uniquely to receive and nurture something inwardly, literally, physically, right? And so recognizing that so much of a man's identity is bound up in what he does, whereas for us, it's more interior, right? We have different body, I don't want to say different body-soul relationships, but that's sort of how Edith Stein says it. She says a man tends to view his body in some ways as an instrument. That's not totally false. Our body has an instrumental quality. Women tend to identify with their bodies, right? We get that we see a body, we see a person. There's something very beautiful about that. But there could be something dangerous about that too. We can think that we're just a body.
So pretty good clip here with a little lapse in the middle. I didn't like what she was saying. She returned to the whisper talking. She's going to share a big secret with her. I don't love that, but everything else she's saying is pretty darn good. What do you say, Will?
Yeah, I liked it. She said that what she saw in her own home growing up was healthy. And that was a key bit for me. And that's why she didn't feel, I think the word was threatened, right? When Lila asked, were you worried about it? And she said she didn't feel too threatened. And for any guys who are struggling in their own marriages, trying to actually live out what the truth of patriarchy entails, I would actually start by asking yourself, okay, here's what I know the truth is. It's not really working out currently practically. In what ways does my wife feel threatened? What kind of misconceptions might she have? Because she probably hasn't seen a healthy example of it. That feeling threatened by what you imagine the boogeyman of patriarchy to be is mainly, I think, at the core of women's antipathy towards it, right? Because women love safety, they love security, they want to feel safe going into a situation, and they've been told so many things about what patriarchy is and isn't, and they have this idea that it's going to ruin their lives. But she knew from what she'd seen with her dad that it makes life better.
Amen.
Yeah,
What do you think?
it's the container in which femininity truly actually thrives. And this is, I mean, it's hard for me to make out some of that clip, but if more women understood that they want the best possible outcome for their marriage and the best possible outcome for their husbands in leading their homes, that they would obey in the way God calls them to obey. I mean, a woman is a tremendous force multiplier in a man's life. And once she understands that it's in that wifely subjection to God through her husband, she basically gets everything she wants. And that means also being okay with being told no, right? It's fairly obvious when you see it in practice. When you talk about it in theory, all kinds of things start to kind of come up in a woman's head. But it's a leap of faith. And then for the men that understand, I mean, the one part that kind of came up was that men that want to be elite, that the leaders of their home is a red flag. It's only a red flag if he doesn't understand that the leadership is for the people subjected to him, not for him. It's for them. And if a man understands that, and a woman gets that, I mean, that's ultimately what we're talking about. And so women don't understand this because, just like Will said, they haven't been actually presented with a righteous example of this. And to be fair, I mean, this is why women like the bad boy, right? There's an element of safety to the bad boy because he has boundaries, where this is kind of course, I think the prime evil is feminism, but I think a big part of this too is guys letting their leadership slide in the home. And it's very easy. I mean, we're all married, and it's very easy. You're making 3,000 decisions every single day. And you've got to keep cool, and you've got to provide, and you've got to provide materially, but also spiritually. And so you can see this tendency toward effeminacy, meaning not wanting to do things that are arduous, meaning saying no, setting boundaries, all of these things. But that's precisely, hey, men, like, you want this feminine wife? These are the things you have to do. So I'm kind of on a tangent, but Will, what you said was brilliant.
Let's see. I think I have clip 6.
You can also get a woman's role really wrong.
Yes.
And I think that's part of where the fear comes in, because it has been used in a way to humiliate and harm in some ways historically. And it also has been used today in a way to, liberate to a way where we become these dominating, really.
You just hear Lila, the feminist, going right back to the patriarchy has been used to humiliate and harm women. That's just bullshit. That's just not true. That's not true. Like, the whole history of humanity is men protecting women and children and raising their families, right? And in some ways better, in some ways worse, but it's so disordered that these feminists like Lila Rose go there first, or they now, maybe she's removed herself from going there first. Maybe it's not the only place. Now maybe she thinks it's half the time patriarchy is harming and humiliating women. Total bullshit. It's not half the time. It's just men are imperfect. Your husband is not Jesus, ladies. You didn't marry him. You married an imperfect guy, and guess what? You made that choice. So it's going to be patriarchy according to his design. So Lila keeps kind of feminizing the interview, feministizing it, and Mary keeps kind of pulling it back toward the right.
Horrible maniacs. I mean,
Yes.
like the empowered woman today, according to kind of mainstream narratives, is like abortion on demand, sleep with whoever I want. I'm not going to submit to a man. Children are a burden. Maybe I'll have one or two, but I'm going to have my career, and that's the most important thing. And I can do whatever I want. And it's all about me. And it's exhausting, quite frankly. It's not life-giving for women because it's not how we were designed. But then there's this flip side of like, well, then you're just going to be the little Susie Q homemaker that has no autonomy, no interests, no desires outside of just this like very exhausting day in, day out toil, and you have this domineering husband or this no good husband that you have to submit to. So it's like, she's like,
Yes,
if those are the
there's
options,
these extremes.
Like,
How do we, right? How do I live? Because both of those look.
And I forgot that with this one, I didn't even get to what Mary's answer was, because what Lila is saying there is so full of dreck. It's so awful. Which she says something like, you're just going to be this little homemaker with no interest. The interest is in homemaking. Women don't have hobbies in the same way men do. Like, so when women take an active interest in like needlework or calligraphy or playing piano or something, or gardening or journaling, that all comes under homemaking. And both of these gals love Edith Stein, who gets a lot wrong. Edith Stein thought that men and women, anthropologically speaking, have a separate, specific difference. We wouldn't be able to procreate if we had a separate, specific difference. So Edith Stein is a woman trying to do philosophy. And therefore she says a lot of silly things like women's intuition is a real thing, all kinds of nonsense. But what she does say that's favorably cited by Mary Stamford is that women are internal. Women are receptive and passive. Men are active and expressive. Even just think of the sex act, the marital act. And this dominates our personalities, even though we have the same specific difference, rational animal. There's like two different kinds of rational animal. It's a mystery woven over the heart of nature. And even though they keep citing Edith Stein, something half decent Edith Stein said, Lila returns to contradicting it, where she's like, women want to be loved for who they are. Men want to be loved for what they do. They both had said this like 3 times in the interview. And I'm like, I actually agree with that. I actually agree with the sort of half correct point, half truth in Edith Stein. But then Lila contradicts it by saying women need all these hobbies. They can't just be homemakers. No, the homemaking is the hobby, and it's everything kind of in the home. Men do things typically more outside the home because we're expressive, we're active, we're doing things in the world. We're trying to change the world. That's why men need sports. That's why men need occasional adventures. So I just think Lila's all wrong here. Did you guys hear anything good in what she was saying? I didn't even get to the question, the answer by Mary in that clip. I was just like, okay, Lila's still not come all the way.
Go ahead, Will. I'm curious to hear your thoughts first here.
Can't quite remember her exact wording, but I think there was something about how feminism has been liberating and led to women being like dominant forces. Anyone who's saying that doesn't understand feminism on a sufficiently deep level to understand it's actually degrading and enslaving to women, and it actually makes them less feminine, less free. So that was the main thing that stood out to me as just totally off course. I'd be interested to know how she arrived at that conclusion. Sometimes it's just something that's pretty thoughtless, like to do with brainwashing. There's a great passage in a book by an atheist guy called William Lecky. It's called A History of European Morals. And I came across it a while ago and just saved it. I want to read out a couple of bits from it because I think it's so interesting to hear this from an atheist. So he says, whatever may be thought of its theological propriety, there can be little doubt that reverence for the Virgin Mary has done much to elevate and purify the ideal of woman and soften the manners of men. So isn't that interesting? So Catholicism, with its reverence for Mary, has helped to improve the status of women and also improve men too in their attitude to women, right? That's crucial. This is an atheist acknowledging that. And he says it gave rise to the redeeming and ennobling features of the age of chivalry, which no succeeding change of habit or belief has wholly destroyed. So a lot of the things that women value in the way that men treat them, he's arguing actually come from the way that Catholics are encouraged to look towards Mary. And he gives a list. I think more people need to know about this. He goes through a couple of things saying, look, compare women under pagan societies to Christian ones. So we've got absolute prohibition of sexual indulgence outside marriage for men as well as for women, right? For men. Such a huge thing for the Christians to say to the pagans who didn't really care so much about that, right? Men could do what they wanted. The security of wives by the prohibition of divorce, another massive benefit for women. The legal rights of guardianship of children, hitherto reserved to men only. The inheritance of widows too, like the men protecting and providing even after they're dead. And he could have gone on. So the Christians were the first to introduce separate prison cells for men and for women. I don't need to go into the details of what happened to the women before that was introduced, right? It's obvious, terrible. Also, Christians say there's no separate baptism for men and women. Christians don't expose baby girls at birth like the Spartans did. You have a girl, you go and put her on the hill and wait for the foxes and wolves and eagles to eat her because you only want boys. Christians also honored women who defied emperors to stand up for the faith and were the first to educate women as well. This is all patriarchy, right? It's all patriarchy and it's all to the benefit of women. So maybe she doesn't know these things. Maybe she's listening to this after the stream. You know them now.
That's amazing stuff. And even sort of a force multiplier that it's adduced by a non-Christian historian. Well, to be fair to Lila, and I think she needs to hear every word of it. To be fair to her, I think she was pitching that as I think in Lila's head, it's like an echo chamber because she's still working this out. I think she said, well, so patriarchy has been really bad and humiliating for women at times. And then at other times, it's just been this false liberation that reduces to sex rights. And of course, that's her work, and she doesn't like that. She rightly dislikes that stuff because she's been anti-abortion for 20 years or something and has done anti-abortion work for 20 years. So she all reduces it to that. It's like, no, but we're trying to get her to see that patriarchy isn't some arithmetic mean between being mean to a lady and a lady being mean to a man. It's not that simple. It's a geometric mean. It's a geometric average. And this idea of women getting humiliated by patriarchy, as your example rightly shows, it's just almost never happens. And if it's happening, it's like, why did this woman pick that? Also, Christianity was the first philosophy or worldview where the woman has the decisive say in getting married. So, like, women they get to pick their bosses. So I do think Lila needs to hear everything you just read, Will. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, it's the illusion of freedom that the serpent whispered into Eve's ear is the same thing that feminism is whispered into a woman's ear. And I think, I mean, ultimately what this comes down to is just like most of us in general, they want their sin and they want to keep a little bit of it to themselves. The idea of some of these women leaving the spotlight behind and going and just serving their households is scary, ultimately scary. So the cope presents itself as, well, patriarchy was so toxic and so bad, and women's suffrage and et cetera, and this is my purpose, and I need to do this because I'm an XYZ, God has called me to this. No, God has called you to serve your household. But because women have this ability to be mental gymnasts in this way, it's hard to give up. But again, to her credit, and to this person's credit, the conversation is shifting. I think I saw a comment in the chat here that Taylor Marshall said on PBD podcast that the Overton window is shifting on feminism. It's absolutely true. That's happening. You're seeing it. I would rather it happen a lot quicker, but it is happening. But it's no different, man. It's what caused Eve to fall is exactly what's causing women to fall. They don't want to give it up. They don't want to give up their sin. So it's patriarchy bad, feminism good. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's simple. And even the good gal here, Mary Stanford, is sort of overcomplicating it. It doesn't require nearly as much massaging, but it's patriarchy good, feminism bad.
For what it even means to submit. And I think this is where the confusion lies. Yes, right? Like, what does it mean to submit? And there's a whole bunch of questions that come from that. Obviously, what about abusive type of behaviors? There's one thing. And then what about the man who's just not taking leadership? Yes. And your feminine intuition is being like, I think we got to make a move here. Yes. And then, of course, there's a situation where the guy is kind of all over the place. So it's like you're submitting to who? No man is perfect. Yes. Every man has their challenges, and no woman is perfect, obviously. So there's two imperfect people here. One has to submit to the other. What does that even mean? And how do you deal with all of these circumstances that might arise or issues that the people might have? Yes. I think, so break it down for us.
So I would say, number one, one way in which we fall into this fear of, oh goodness, does this mean he makes every decision and tells me what to do and I have no autonomy and no respect? Number one, no. I want to go there. I want to talk about what I would call like final say decisions, right? When we all as couples at some point reach kind of an impasse where I think this is the best course of action. I think this is the best. What do we do? Okay, so we'll go there. But number one, that doesn't happen every day. If it happens every day, maybe there's an issue going on. But what do you mean? Like that couples would be at loggerheads every single day about a decision, right? Because when I think of the course of my marriage, I can't think of, I can probably count on one hand the amount of like, all right, here, this is a big decision regarding our family and our family's future. And I think this is the best. And he thinks this is the best. And we got to make a decision. And I give it to him.
Let me pause. Do you guys agree with that? What she said about how few and far between actual loggerheads or impasses are between husband and wife? Just yes or no?
Yeah.
It's definitely not every day. I agree with that. I don't think it's only 5 times. And I don't think that the impasse only happens on huge life decisions for the family. Do we go to Italy to study or not? Steph didn't really want to go at first, but I was like, well, we're going. And then she loved it. I mean, so yeah, there might only be 5 or 4 like that where it's making a move because we just don't move that often logistically. And it definitely doesn't happen every day, but I think she's exaggerating the seldomness of impasse. Impasse happens with a lot of medium and even small decisions, and it definitely happens probably once a month where it's like, yeah, I heard you out because my wife's really smart, but I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. So I think she's exaggerating the seldomness. What do you think, Mike or Will?
Yeah. I agree. You know, I hear this talking point a lot. It's like, oh, maybe it's 1 or 2 decisions a year that we come to sort of head on. It's like, no, that's kind of cope. He's probably just like capitulating to you, and you're just being overly rebellious, and he's just like exhausted and longhoused into just agreeing with you because he doesn't want to hear your shit anymore. That's what, that's what it is.
Later. Which Mary addresses later. She's like, this is bad if that's what's happening. And she seems like a good woman, but if it's only 5 times, then her husband must have done that exactly as Mike described.
Yeah, fully agree.
Okay, I'll go on with the clip.
Like, if that's happening every day, it just seems like there's a lack of trust in that relationship.
Agreed.
If that's happening every day, then there's a micromanaging that's happening
Yes,
inherent
which
to the
I think
relationship,
is
which
probably
harmful.
coming from a lack of trust, right? And so when you think about every day in and day out, right? I make tons of decisions for my kids, for dinner, for things like that, right? And guess what? Most of them we don't even talk about because my husband trusts me and I trust him. So we're not.
I mean, at first I thought she was doing feminist cope, but then I was like, yeah, that's true. I don't decide what's for dinner at night. Do you guys decide what's for dinner?
That just sounds normal. Like the husband has just delegated some duties to her and she handles them. Like,
Yeah. No, me too. But
Sometimes
it's a
my wife
slippery
asks.
slope. Yeah.
But it's generally like that's something I'd prefer her to think about.
Yeah, me too. So, I do know guys that have decided things like dinner, and I have used the term micromanage, but I would never. I'm not as judgy as Lila, or it sounds like even Mary here when I say micromanaging, because they seem to be really, especially Lila, really like, well, that's like abusive. No, it's not. It's just I don't like being that micromanaging because I hate detail with my whole heart. So Steph I've delegated long ago, like you'll decide what's for dinner, unless I want some amendment at the last minute.
Always sort of second guessing each other. So when you think about a dynamic of gift, anytime there's a free offering and a free receiving, it is trust that is the glue that holds any gift dynamic together. The person who is sort of doing the offering is trusting that what he or she is doing is going to be received well and appreciated, right? We're not guaranteed that, right? You can give somebody a gift and have them reject it. You can be hurt, right, as a giver. A receiver is trusting that whatever is being offered is done out of love, done for their good, right? Not to use them, control them, extort. There's all sorts of sort of, we know this in our culture. As a matter of fact, we have a culture of very controlled gift giving, right? When you look about wedding registries and gift cards and returning gifts, we know, I think deep down the human person knows that any form of giving and receiving is fraught with risk and fraught with the possibility of getting hurt. That's why we like controlled forms of gift giving, right? We try to make ourselves invulnerable. But that being said,
I thought that was a good point. But what she says at the very beginning here, maybe I'll replay it real quick. Men who won't lead. I just want to talk to you guys about this for a second. I know Will and Mike, you both deal with it in coaching in some level.
Yes, right. Like,
Listen
what does it
to
mean
this.
to submit? And there's a whole bunch of questions that come from that. Obviously, what about abusive type of behaviors? There's one thing. And then what about the man who's just not taking leadership?
So the man who's just not taking leadership, I would say this, and I want to get your guys' opinion because you two are kind of experts on this. The man who won't lead. I'd say because of the fall, women, in Genesis 3 and 4, are told that they're going to have this altered, perverted nature where they want power, and they usually do it under the pretext that their man refuses to lead. I mean, Christian women, conservative women, they kind of know that they have to use the pretext that the man's refusing to lead, and that's how they have to characterize their desire. I don't want power, but I just lead because he won't. It's a pretext in a lot of cases. Now, not in every case, but I mean, I would say in every case you can't lead because no one will follow a woman. What's your guys' experience with this, and how pretextual do you think that claim is out of the mouths of most women who say it?
I think when it comes to hearing this, I think it's just a different flavor of he's got to be worthy of submission.
Me too.
And it is so common because even if he's not leading, you got to meet your husband where he's at. And by doing that, you bolster him. You pray for him. Your prayers are efficacious. They're meritorious. God hears those prayers through your obedience to your husband, and that bolsters him as a man, and that has the ability to change him. It's not you longhousing him. It's not you saying, well, he's not leading. According to whose standard is he not leading? How do you know what leadership is?
That's it. According to whose standard is he not leading? A lot of women will say this about, you'll hear this term in America. It's got great cultural import, like video game. My husband plays video games. I play video games with my wife and all my children. I mean, like, we have electricity, you know, we're not Quakers. What does everyone else do at night? It's pretty much movies or video games, and we're pretty much all together. That doesn't mean he's not leading. Now, I know some men abuse it, but they'll just say video games, automatic equation, he's not leading. Like, according to whose standard is he not leading? Well,
there was one bit in there about trust, like trust being the glue that holds the marriage or the family together, I think. And I was thinking, I'm not sure that's true. I think it's actually duty. Like, duty is the thing that really binds the family together, and it rests on the authority structure. So when you're talking about trust, it's like there's some kind of agreement that she can dip into or dip out of, depending on how you performed over the last week or month or whatever. Really, duty is a much surer guide to what marriage really involves for both of you. It's your duty to actually submit to him. And Mike made the great point there that sometimes that might involve suffering for you. And you take that suffering that results from his defects, which are real, right? We're not saying he has to be perfect for you to submit to him. You take that suffering which results from his defects, and then you offer that up as a penance for his correction, and you let God handle it. You don't whine at him or say that he's pathetic or that he can't lead. You just recognize, and we're coming back to the reality of original sin here, that you both have defects, right? So I tell the guys that, yes, she's going to want to take control. You're going to find it in yourself too, that there's this tendency to abdicate authority and step back from being in that pressure zone, feeling that heat. It's the fire that will make you a better man, but sometimes it's going to burn, sting the weakness in you. So yeah, there'll be both things involved at once.
Great.
So well
comment.
said.
Yeah, both of you. I like even just pausing and being like, do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? I love that aspect of being able to do this within her. This is why I grab these clips. It takes a lot of time, and it was penitential. I had to listen to two women talk for like an hour. it was good because I knew I'd get your guys' commentary and I could pause and stuff.
Giving it to them, even like starting small. Okay, if you're having a control issue like with your husband, starting small, giving something to them, telling them you trust them to do it.
What do you think is driving the control issue that women have?
I think that is
The fall, and women having an orientation toward becoming a huge bitch at the fall, you know, and trying to look for every excuse, every pretext to take control. And that's exactly what man says the curse of Eve will be. I talked to Pastor Joel Webbin this week, and that's exactly what he said. It was so
That was
good.
an epic conversation. By the way, everybody listening to this, either right now or after, go and watch that interview with Joel Webbin. He's a Protestant, but a based one at that. And that was a tremendous conversation on patriarchy. Just wanted to say that, Tim.
Thanks, Mike. He's an epic dude. Well, though a Protestant, you know, I mean, that's hard for me to say, hard to get those words past my teeth, but he is an epic dude. I really, really like that guy. And we had a good conversation about Israel and the JJJs for my locals behind a paywall too. But yeah, thanks for saying that. He just knocked it out of the park when it came to this question. And you're going to hear the biggest doctrinal goof of the interview by Mary in a second with her answer, I believe.
as a matter of fact, when you talk about the Bible, right? Even though
It was the first sin. I want control.
It was
Eve's first sin that then led Adam into sin. And Adam had his own issues, but Eve's issue was I want control. I want
That's
to be God.
Lila saying
absolutely. And in the beginning chapters of my book,
Here's the truth whisperer, Mary. And it sounds like she's going to get it right because she's been getting a lot of stuff right. But then listen, everyone will just sort of offset it so everyone can listen with prepped ears. She runs into that patriarchy is only post-lapsarian bullshit. And I don't think she's saying it to lie. I think she honestly doesn't know that Ambrose, Jerome, St. John Chrysostom, Augustine, they all say, and so does the Bible in the New Testament. It looks back and it says Adam was created first, even before the fall, because he's in charge. Adam named her because he's in charge. She was made from his rib. That's all pre-fall, ladies, because he's the main character. She's the helpmeet. She was made from his rib, not his head, to show that she is under him. She's under his headship. The rib is under the headship. I'm not making all this up. This is literally a combination of stuff that Jerome Ambrose, Augustine, and St. John Chrysostom said, and it was widely accepted. And St. Paul says it in New Testament too. So listen, she does step into that pitfall where she says that patriarchy is only post-lapsarian, or she implies it. She's saying it was not pre-lapsarian.
We take a deep dive into Genesis, and that's where I think. So, what happens at the end of that first sin? We see God telling them. He says to her, "Your desire shall be for your husband, and he will rule over you." I think it's really important to clarify that phrase there is not so much prescriptive, as in, this is God's plan now for men and women. It's more descriptive. It's the natural consequence of what they've done, the natural consequence of sin, right?
Wrong. This is flat out wrong. Joel Webbin hit it out of the park when he said, patriarchy is not the curse for Eve's fall. Her resentment against patriarchy is her curse for her fall, Eve's. Absolutely wrong. Adam was in charge of Eve well before, from the very beginning. As soon as Eve was created for him, that's before the fall. She was created before she fell, right, ladies? She was created before she fell, and Scripture says in 2 places she was created for him, from his rib, under his headship. He named her. It was after him. This is straight up wrong. Mary Stanford seems like a high quality gal. Maybe I'll try to get this clip to her, but patriarchy is absolutely prelapsarian. The patriarchy is not the curse, Mary. I know Lila might have cotton stuffed in her ears, but you should be capable of getting this. Patriarchy is the gift of men and women from the outset of creation. The curse is her resentment of patriarchy, not patriarchy itself.
Saying, I don't want a receptive, obedient relationship with God. I'm going to take what I want. I'm going to use God, right? I'm going to take his knowledge, right? They were promised to have the knowledge to be like God's. I'm going to take that, so I don't need God anymore. That's an approach that is not receptive, it's one of taking. But then we see that Adam and Eve are left, that the consequence of that decision is not sort of identical on either side. We see that she now is subject to his control, or at least a desire for him to maybe control, use. She's more objectified in his eyes, right? But what about her? Your desires.
Sorry about that. What is that? There's a little more.
This is an unhealthy desire. Women desire relationships. We know we're fulfilled, so.
Feel like I'm watching a Lifetime movie. Women desire relationships. No, I mean she's saying pretty good stuff, but she just gets this part flat out wrong. It's straightforward stuff, so you kind of just want to write an email or something. And she seems like a good person, a good Catholic, and a good wife by and large. You just need to almost get a hold of her and tell her this is straight up wrong. Patriarchy is prelapsarian.
Yeah, this isn't like an edgy point. Father Rundle, who ran a radio call-in show called Radio Replies, you can go get all the answers online. Someone asks him about the role of women in Christianity, and this must have been like in probably 1950s, 60s, and he says basically the same thing that Tim just said. Like, here's his response. Every being's true glory and honor is to keep the place assigned to him or her by God. Now, God himself differentiated between the sexes, and that difference should be manifested during our public religious acknowledgement of him. Man was created first, and woman dependently upon man. The covering of a woman's head was to be a sign of this dependence. Both men and women are created, of course, for God, and their souls are equally precious to him, but secondarily, women were created as the helpmates of men, so that secondarily women were created for men rather than men for women. So women were created for men, and this is the case before the fall. It's the structure of reality. Patriarchy is reality, is the shorthand way of saying it. And any deviation from it is going to lead to suffering to men, women, but most of all children, because the primary natural purpose of the family is the begetting and the raising of children. So they're the real victims of people trying to deviate from the natural law plan for how marriage is supposed to be.
You know why women suffer out of a nescience on the point that you just read, Will, and that I'm complaining about? It's because they keep thinking the errant thing that Lila said earlier, like, well, women just aren't going to have all these hard bracket manly hobbies. Like women, if they and Mary, who does seem like a good woman, says later she started watching football just because she wanted to do something with her husband, and she got into it. That is the natural ordering. Women will take on the hobbies of their men sort of secondarily, together with their primary hobbies, are just of or concerning the home, whether it's gardening or whatever, journaling or playing some sort of music that can be heard, pianoforte, that it's all domestic. And if they think that they're the main characters, Mike, and they don't understand that they are, as a matter of fact, not just as a matter of post-lapse curse, but as a matter of the fact of creation, early Genesis 1 and 2, not Genesis 4, but early Genesis, they were made that way all along. That was not part of them. The fact that they're dependent on men and that they're kind of there for the man, that women are created for men aren't created for women. That's a quote from the Bible. That was from before the fall. If they don't know that, then they're going to be trying to get these manly hobbies that make them feel bad. Why am I not good at these manly hobbies? Why does nobody watch the WNBA? What's his face just made that joke that went viral, where he pointed out a woman in the audience, just a random black woman, and he said she's a 4-time NBA All-Star, and everyone clapped. And he was like, "Ha, gotcha." No one knows anyone in the WNBA. That makes women feel bad, even women who don't play in the WNBA, because they've been duped. No one wants to watch them do that. People will, I'm not trying to sound like a perv, will go watch a cheerleader at a man's game because that's well ordered. Women are natural cheerleaders. They're not the athletes. The athletes are the main characters in a game. What do you say, Mike?
Well, I mean, you just ask these feminists or these crypto feminists, why are the most well-ordered households the ones that resemble the prelapsarian dynamic? Why? Because that was part of the originally instituted natural created order and design. I think there's like this weird understanding of like what happened when sin came into the world. I think they're just reading what they want to read into Genesis. And then the cognitive dissonance and feminism has come into the world as a result of sin, and et cetera, has come along, and they've just totally I think where it comes from is that, well, this word patriarchy maybe didn't exist back then, pre-fall, but Adam and Eve were living in perfect order, in perfect congruity with how God had created them. So there's no need to even like think about this dynamic. Eve did what women do. Adam was doing what men do. And so there was no need for even any of this like verbiage, because they were living in perfect harmony with that order. Sin got introduced, and now there is an effeminacy in men, and then a desire to usurp power in women. And then now they somehow cope and have subverted the truth to think that, no, it's actually patriarchy as a result of the fall. Well, that's pure feminism cope smokescreen bullshit.
I tell you what is the result of the fall is multiple wives, right? If there's some Protestant guys listening, I see you on X talking about multiple wives. I know you're there. There's probably like 3 of you listening. Multiple wives is the result of the fall. That's the first guy who does it is in the line of Cain, Lamech. So God instituted monogamy, okay? Patriarchal monogamy, that's what Eden is about. And don't go saying that we need to go back to multiple wives. Nonsense.
Total nonsense.
Stop gooning.
Yeah. Mike, I just thought Joel said it perfectly. And again, he put it so succinctly that he was like, patriarchy is not the curse. The curse is women's resentment. What Will just said, women's wanting to supplant the power. I think maybe both of you just said it. It's so simple, but even I hadn't put it that simply before. Even I don't know if that had dawned on you guys, but it hadn't dawned on me. I was like, wow. Mary needs to go listen, because I think she does have open ears and eyes to see. I think she needs to go watch that interview with Joel Webben, or this episode of Seamaskew today.
It's even higher.
Restore it. Absolutely higher.
Because the role of it was like, because Adam wasn't asked to lay down his life for Eve in the garden, and Eve wasn't asked to submit to Adam. They were both submitting to God.
Interesting, right?
So
That
that's
wasn't even
like-
sort of
there's a new
spelled
order.
out, but
It's
they
crazy.
definitely were fractured. That union was fractured.
So there's more BS. That's Lila trying to justify the fallacy that patriarchy is only post-lapsarian. She's Lila's trying to come up with a rationale for it, and it's ad hoc and it's wrong. The way things that are ad hoc are often wrong, because that's not true. Like Will and Mike just articulated so well. You want to live how they lived before the fall. The philosophical question, the mystery of iniquity is, well, why, when they were living in peace and harmony, did the fall happen? Now that's the mystery of iniquity. But anyway, we don't have to get that deep today. We're sticking to basic stuff. Like patriarchy is good and was created with Eve being created out of Adam's side. Not created out of his head. That would have been a shared headship, co-equals, doesn't work. Would have been like a dude living with a dude. Would have been like a homosexual kind of thing. If Eve had been created out of his head, it could have only been a man. She's created below his headship. She's created for him. She's created after him. And he named her. So, I mean, those 4 early Genesis facts alone just strike down any possibility of the false idea that patriarchy is only post-lapsarian. But aside from this, and aside from the fact that Mary Stanford does teach at Christendom College, I guess as an adjunct part-time, and she kind of attempts to teach men here, but she's mainly focusing on women. Aside from all the citation of Edith Stein, I like what she has to say. Those 3 big exceptions.
The men's side too about their gripes with their wives. But right now, I guess we're speaking more to the women, like what they have the power to change.
Yes,
because this is meant to be empowering to women to be, especially if they're wives, but preparing to be wives, or just generally as women in the feminine nature. How
Lila's always wanted to critique the men. Mary wants to critique the women, which is good.
And I guess I would argue, though, that if we're able to exercise a little more tenderness on our receptivity, or like noticing things, appreciating things, or even, like I said, asking our husband for help and giving over some of that, even if he doesn't do it perfectly, right? Being willing to give it over, that will have an effect on motivating him. He's going to see how happy it made you. He's going to see how he felt when he contributed and helped you out in an area where you had been kind of shrill and suffering, right? If he sees that, that's going to be a motivator. The one motivation that never seems to work is a documented failure, is nagging.
A great point by Mary here. Nagging, can we talk about this for a second? People will be surprised to hear Mike Tim make this admission, but nagging really does, the few times it's ever happened in my early marriage, it really hurts a man's feelings. It hurts your feelings. And so she's talking about this in her whisper voice. She's talking about the lack of receptivity to a gift. I have, Steph is so grateful. Gratitude's such a strong virtue of hers, but even little things, not a technical gift, little things that you offer or present, or, hey, I went and squished the bug in the room. If they're not received enthusiastically, it can easily hurt your feelings. So nagging and non-enthusiastic gift reception actually does hurt a man's feelings, right? And I'm not known as some big feeler, but Mike, and neither are you, Mike, but Will, you're kind of known as the stoic Christian kingpin. But it hurts the feelings, right?
Yeah, it's bad. If you look at even like secular research on what makes and breaks marriages, nagging is really clearly identified as like a negative communication pattern. It doesn't get either party what they want. For guys who are in marriages where nagging is like a daily feature, and I know you're out there, I'm sorry you're in that situation, you might not be able to get a quick fix to it, but if you dig down to what some of the underlying unmet needs or problems are and try to see beneath the surface, don't get sucked into like an emotional battle where you use mean words back at your wife. Sometimes there's a core truth behind or underneath the nagging that is worth looking at, but nagging is the wrong way to go about it.
It castrates a man. It completely castrates a man. It turns him into a little boy. And there's like you can kind of feel yourself kind of sinking into yourself when that does happen. And to the point about receptivity to a gift, this reminds me of, I'm not sure if it was I think it was John Gottman. Is he Christian? I think he's Protestant. Anyways, most of this like marriage stuff that you find in these books are kind of gay and not really like, don't really contain that much truth. It's kind of effeminate. But there's one thing that is very true. Turning inward to each other's bids. Like, when I go to my wife and I show her something that is like not even completely within her scope of interest, something that interests me, but I'm like excitable in sharing it with her, her little bit of excitement and sharing that moment with me does everything to support me.
Yeah.
It doesn't even take that much. And then being attentive as a man, don't be a retard. When your wife does that to you, if it's something related to sewing or what little thing that she's interested in, receive that gift and throw it right back at her. with a shared conjoined interest. And I think a lot of guys really, I noticed a lot of guys that come to me and talk about their marital dynamic, there's a lack of that. And I think, maybe she's not speaking about this in this context, but it's still worth saying. And I think, I think it's important to mention.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's annoying if women say it, but it's true. It's like, don't be a fucking caveman. Like, if you want your wife to embrace the domestic arts and then she's getting into it, don't be like, oh, that's for fags. What do you want me to be like excited about needlework?
Yeah,
like, it's cool. Like, Steph's stitch work is cool. I get it. I'm not faking it. I get excited for her. Like, when my daughter's really started thriving playing the piano, years of lessons now. That's cool. Which Steph is become a great green thumb gardener, and she'll ask humbly, each spring, hey, could I go get some flowers? And then she's doing better and better with the beautification of the outside of the home. She's always been great at the inside of the home beautification, but the outside of the home, it just keeps looking better and better. It's exciting. If you want your wife to do this stuff and then they bring it to you and you just shunt it aside, then it's a dick move. And it's also sending mixed signals. But women need to do this more than anyone. And Mary makes a great point. The last clip I pulled is her talking about sharing an interest with her husband. That's mainly on women to do. You shouldn't be watching your show or your sport or whatever you like to watch. It shouldn't be relegated to a little enclave or a man cave. That's pathetic. It should be kind of in the center of the house, and the wife's like, oh, well, what are you watching? I'll watch with you. It's how you can tell this Mary Stanford is a good lady. She says she got into football watching it with her husband. I don't know what you think about that. Well, I'll play that clip in a second.
The point about man caves was making me laugh, because one time we lived in a flat, and just because it worked out cheaper, I actually Mike, you'll love this, I put a power rack in the corner of the living room. Like total opposite of a man cave. It was like, here it is. Luckily it wasn't for long, but yeah, the opposite of a man cave. It didn't even get decorated with flowers or anything. We just left it there.
Based.
People used to laugh because in our home in California, which we just rented, but even though we could only afford to rent, it was still much smaller than what we have here, or blessed to have. We had kind of a kitchen dining room den it wasn't like an efficiency flat, but it was all kind of one space. And above the doorway, I had an indoor basketball hoop here. And then on the doorway that was the through door to the backyard, another basketball hoop there. So me and my friends would play. They'd come over. We'd be talking philosophy or theology or watching TV. We'd start playing like full court indoor basketball. And I remember some feministy gal came over and asked Steph, like, oh, I can't believe you allow this right through in the throughway of basically the center of the house, which goes through the dining room. And she's like, number one, allow. It's Tim allowing it. He allows himself to do that. He's in charge. And number two, I like when he does this. I like watching him jump around and get into fights with his friends. So it's great to hear you did that well. It's very encouraging. Taylor Marshall and I did a podcast on this many years ago now, I guess in late 2018, and he was like, man cave, it's a man house. And that was a good line.
Any guys listening, though, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it was an unusual circumstance. We're living in a spot where it just made sense at the time, but as a general move, like, I wouldn't recommend it.
I do. On the other hand, I do recommend getting a pair of basketball hoops in your dining room. What can I say? They take up less space.
And I do recommend making an entire floor your gym floor. So, yeah. And I highly recommend letting your wife just decorate everything in the house. It's going to be way better than you, bro. Just let her do her thing. Let go of that. Okay? Don't be a petty bitch.
Yeah, generally, like, inside our house is not overly girly. It just looks good with colors and stuff. Even Steph had a lot of the ideas for this new studio in here, and it looks really cool. So yeah, I mean, it's a prudential thing, but like, women are naturally good at that stuff, and you don't want to divest them of their gift or whatever. But anyway, here's where Mary says she got into watching football. I thought this was sweet.
What she needs. And as women, sometimes we want them to play a guessing game. No, for some husbands, but let him ask. So husbands, ask, how can I help you? How can I serve? Right? Because they're not really going to be happy unless you're thrilled. So husbands, it's...
No, I forgot this. I don't. She has to understand this is a bright line rule out of Scripture. Never, as a middle-aged woman, never be seeking to even give a pointer to husbands. Husbands can teach young men or young women, but wives can only teach young women, and this is so clear in the Pauline scriptures and the whole trajectory of the New Testament that she keeps dodging it. Lila keeps wanting to talk about what young married men need to do, and to her credit, Mary keeps saying, "Oh, I'd rather focus on the women." But here she does sort of indulge for 20 seconds, and then she dips more because she's got a good head on her shoulders. She dips more into, no, this is what women need to do.
Incumbent upon them, right? You're going to be happy when she's happy, so find out what's going to make her happy. However, here's a caution, and maybe this will kind of go into like the harder situation topic. And I use an example for Pride and Prejudice in the book. If making her happy just means saying yes to everything that she wants, even if you don't see that it's good, that is a problem. The example that I gave in the book, I don't want to pick on anyone in particular. So in Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Bennet does not think it's a good idea to allow his daughter, Lydia, to go on a seaside holiday without chaperones, right? He thinks it's not a good idea. She's a flirt. She's disobedient. He doesn't think it's good. He thinks it's imprudent, right? His reason, his logic, his whole core being is saying, don't do this. But he ends up letting her go. And the reason is because his wife wouldn't leave him alone about it. Come on. In other words, I'm not going to be happy unless you give me what I want. If it violates his understanding, and this is the problem. And you know what? When you do that enough, they're going to check out. And what I focused on in the book is actually what happens to their marriage. Well, of course, she runs off with Wickham and does all sorts of things. She might have done that anyway, right? We can't control what our kids are ultimately going to do. You do your best as a parent. But what happens between the couple, right? They're more alienated than ever because she didn't trust him,
and they
the
despise each
resentment
other.
builds.
Yeah.
And so engaged means this is part of where my respect comes in. I do have to respect his opinion. And even if we've talked a situation to death and looked at all the angles and prayed about it, if we get to an impasse, right? I'm going to respect him because he needs to do what he thinks is best. And this is something that Edith Stein points out. For women, we are so person-oriented that we tend to give our relationships priority. I can get on board with something that I'm not as excited about for the sake of a relationship. I use the example of when I wanted to hang out with my husband when we were dating. I knew on Sundays he enjoyed watching football. So if I wanted to hang out with him, I had to watch the game. And at the time I wasn't interested. Well, I did it. I actually came to like football a lot, but I did it for the sake of the relationship. My mom learned all about cars because my dad was an engineer and loved he loved classic cars. I think they were actually just the cars at the time, but we all...
So that's what I got for today. I think she does seem like a good one. I mean, make these little corrections, probably get off the Edith Stein. Even though she was saying right things to men, don't always indulge the women. You got to be. That's still a woman teaching men. It's like a paradox. It's like using Sauron's ring for good. It can't happen. You can't have a woman talking down to men, telling men not to listen to their wives over much, which is what she was saying. And it was a great example from Pride and Prejudice with what happens with the young, silly daughter and Mr. Wickham. It's all a great point, but she's got to know this is a hard line distinction. You can't teach men. And then, of course, the main doctrinal flaw that patriarchy is post-lapsarian. That's just not true. What did you guys think of that? That was pretty much the whole interview in clips. What are your takeaways here, Mike and Will?
I think it was overly fluffy and overly verbose, but I understand that, the Overton window is shifting. We have to be patient with the people coming around to our position, although especially you, Tim, you've been, and, Will, you guys had much to lose and have lost much with preaching this message. So it's amazing. And I'm probably very, especially encouraging to you guys to see this happen. This Mary lady seems very well-intentioned. Her heart is in the right place. And I think she said, for the most part, things that were very, 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 very correct. And it's also very encouraging to see Lila come around. So I think this was a great show, guys. I think we hammered on the right points. And Will, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think overall it was good to hear. And for guys getting frustrated that we didn't hear the exact points that we wanted to hear, you got to remember that sometimes it's not sensible to expect women to really come in and nail it like that because of the social pressure involved in doing so and the courage required to do it. So if you are really wanting a woman to come out and speak on the topic of patriarchy like Tim does, for example, in a way you're kind of wanting her to be like a man. So
that's true.
just expect it to always be a bit like this and be grateful for some of the points that have been made there. I think that it just is going to be this way for a long time. The lecture that I got sacked for, I deliberately tried to cut out everything that was specifically Christian about patriarchy. So I thought, okay, this will be controversial enough, just doing it from a natural law perspective. Even that was too much, right? We didn't even go like full-blooded Christian patriarchy. So any kind of recognition that patriarchy has something to it, especially from women, is something to be grateful for.
That's a great point. I just feel like that's a great point. Well, it's a bit silly. There's a paradox in expecting a woman to publicly extol patriarchy perfectly. There's a lot of P's in that sentence, but I do think for like I consider the founding members of this channel. Well, you and I, both of whom lost jobs and real money and real power in the world for going to bat for patriarchy. You on that side of the pond, me here. I do feel this. I feel this mixed emotion when I see the message winning. I think of something that Ronald Reagan used to always say. He'd say, "You can accomplish anything if only you're willing to avoid taking credit for it." And I was going to tell this to Fuentes, Nicholas Fuentes, who I've been talking to more, who really was kind of one of the first people on board on the whole JQ issue. And in terms of popularizing it, he was really on board early. And now that it's the Overton window is expanding, I think rightly, kind of like it would be fair for you or I to have this, to make this observation. It's like, wow, people condemned me at first. I lost all kinds of opportunities because I was brave and had far vision on this, like a Will Noland or a Nick Fuentes on the other issue. And then the culture started changing, but people aren't coming back around and doing the looking to the top of the provenance and saying, so now that I'm coming around, who did this? Now it's just Con Inc. is picking up on both issues, and to some extent doing a limited hangout and sort of having what they're willing to say, and never coming back around and saying, oh, Noland was right, or Gordon was right, or Fuentes was right. And I don't know exactly where to be. It's good to be stoic and to say, oh, Reagan was right, as long as I'm willing to forego. I do just care about doing my part in the powerful play, which goes on with my part in it. But it's nice to get some acknowledgement. It's nice to sell some more books. If it's like this was the first book on it, it's nice to get your propers. And it's something to be struggled with. And some days I wake up and I'm just glad that I was able to do work in the vineyard. Other days I feel a little pettier, and I'm like, I'd love to get due propers. I don't think that's strictly speaking petty. I don't know how you feel about this, Will. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, you lost a job, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, I would say that ultimately all we want to do is die and have God say, like, good job. That's the most important thing. And all the core important ideas at the heart of patriarchy and what it takes to promote it, they're all from the Catholic Church anyway, right? There's not stuff that we thought up and can claim ownership of. And I also think that you got a rare gift, I think, Tim, for be able to speak for like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes in like debate style shows and get things right just from memory off the cuff. Even that gift is something that's from God too, right? To use. So there is a sense in which the antidote to feeling like someone has passed over something you've done is just to say, it doesn't really matter, right? Like your criticism doesn't mean much to me, and your praise doesn't mean much either. Everything good about this whole project is something that's like on loan to me from God, and that's where I'm looking for my recognition from. However, having said that, and I think that's like the spiritually most healthy way to look at it, it is frustrating if you see someone taking credit unjustly for something that actually they're saying is all about them and not giving glory to God or not recognizing the work of people who come before them. So I get it. I can see that side of it too.
Especially if they once condemned X, Y, or Z, and now they're like ripping it off. Yeah, no, but this is why I asked the great stoic Catholic kingpin, well, I knew you'd have a good spiritual perspective on it. And it's not something I struggle with much because I don't need it much. I know it's how Fuentes has got to be feeling, and he's a bit younger. And it has suffered in actually more profound ways. You know, Kenny, who got debanked and stuff. But it's a real issue because Con Inc. The only reason I bring it up is because Con Inc. is like a wave of locusts. There's actually Nick from, used to be on the show would say this. Con Inc. is like a wave of locusts. They do a superficial flyby job of covering for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks a topic that because it's moved into the Overton window, but barely, now they're like, oh, it's safe. So they cut it in half. They do a limited hangout. The locusts just come, eat all the crops. Then they're on to the next either boring or safe or mildly dangerous thing. And they don't do justice to it anyway. So I think maybe I'm just coping, but the way that I would justify, well, Will Nolan needs to be known as one of the patriarchy guys. He needs to be on the bigger shows, is because only he alone and myself and Mike, only a few guys are going to get it all the way right. And only, you can't have the halving of the message, which is what Con Inc. will do to it if they get their sticky paws on it. But maybe it's just a cope. It doesn't matter anyway, because what's going to happen is what's going to happen. Deo gratias.
The real ones are going to discover that through Con Inc. And then eventually through their own self-discovery, they're going to find us and your book. Ultimately, people have to start with baby food before they move up to the grown-up real man food. That's what happened to me in my reversion to the church. It started with really like low tiers, kind of just slop, anti-Protestant apologetics on YouTube, and then I found myself reading the church fathers, listening to CMASC even more frequently, and Rules for Retrogrades, and then I was fully red-pilled on the faith, and then I graduated up. And I think the same thing is going to happen with patriarchy, and that there's going to be a huge wave of highly successful, nurtured patriarchal household as a result. And so you may not sit fully in the shade of the tree that you plant, but it's worth planting the tree, and the tree's growing more quickly than you even think, dude. That's what I think.
Amen. Well, God bless you both. Honored to be brothers at arms with you two. And I don't know how old the channel's a little younger, but I don't know how long CMASC has gone on now. It's over 2 years, right, Will?
Yeah, we'll have to have a look at when the first ones were. I think it might be coming up for 3 years now.
Yeah, it's well over 2. It might be coming up to 3 because the first one was on Elliot's channel or my channel or your channel. We'll have to look. Anyway,
I think it was 2022. I think, you guys are on 3 years, and I started with you guys in 2024, early 2024. I just wanted to say real quick, because we're really bad at self-promotion. For everybody listening, either currently or afterwards, go and subscribe to Tim's Locals. Okay, I'm a subscriber at his Locals channel, and it's fantastic. Go subscribe to Tim, support him and his family. If you guys are looking to lead in your marriages more effectively, be the patriarchs God has called you to be, sign up for Marriage Mastery and the Patriarchy Project through my man Will Nolan. I have an inside look of his group, and it's gold. And if you're a guy that's wanting to overcome lust and get in better shape, contact me. I have my coaching application. We'll leave all that stuff in the link below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We need to be more shameless about that stuff, guys, because we offer valuable services.
Thanks for saying that.
Mike, is that 805 deadlift guaranteed?
You'll see. Get on an intro call with me first.
Oh, man. Well, God bless you guys. Thanks for saying that, Mike. God bless all you. We'll try to be real regular with this. We're just 3 dads with webcams, as it's been said, and we like doing this on Fridays. But was this live? Are we live?
Yeah.
This
is live. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Hi, world. I can't. My computer's not in front of me in this new setup. All right. Well, God bless you guys. Hopefully, you got a lot out of that. So you only had to listen to a total of like 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes of 2 women talking. But good for Mary Stamford and Lila Rose. Hopefully, she comes around a lot more. But she is coming around because patriarchy, as Will Nolan says, is inevitable. Its existence. It's life itself for human beings.
Exactly.
Amen. I love you guys.
Take
Catch
care,
you in the
guys.
next one.
See you soon. Bye.
Peace.